I cover a lot of FNAF games on this channel, and trust me, I'll be covering a lot more for a long time. Recently, I had an interesting thought. Who am I to be the judge of FNAF games? I don't make FNAF games myself. Who's to say I even understand the craft? So recently, I took it upon myself to design my very own Five Nights at Freddy's fan game from start to finish, from the art to the design to the programming. And to make it more interesting, I decided to only give myself 48 hours to do so. In this video, I'll be going over that process, so let's get into it. And don't worry, now that I make FNAF games, I won't start flirting with children either. Let's go. The first thing I had to come up with was what I was going to make the game about. I wanted to do something unique that I'd never seen before. And trust me, I've seen a lot of different FNAF games, and I think I chose something that nobody else has done yet. Rather than using animatronics, I was going to use people, specifically geriatrics. The setting of my game takes place in a nursing home, where you have to fend off 3 angry old gooners while you watch the front desk every night. Before I start showing you what this game looks like, I first need to turn into your high school English teacher and say, I'm not an artist. Now that that's out the way, I'll start showing you what the gameplay looks like. So, with an idea in my head, I started designing what I would be calling the Whisper Boys. As I stated before, there are 3 characters you are defending yourself from, those men being Walter, Liam, and Carl. I wanted to use a mechanic that I haven't seen before, but of course, coming up with something original is really hard now. But I think I came up with something pretty interesting. I wanted this game to be very sound reliant, similar to Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Both because I was on a time crunch and because I thought it would be very epic and very sussy, I decided that every single camera in the game wouldn't have any video, and you would have to resort to listening to the cameras to be able to tell where the guys were at. The Whisper Boys contains 16 different cameras with 3 different sectors of the building the characters can be in. I'll get into their AI movement later. I didn't want the cameras to waste power, and I actually didn't want power in general, because I felt like that in a setting like this, a power system wouldn't even be realistic. And since I like to criticize realism in the games I cover, I figured I should be as realistic as I can when designing my game. There are no doors to close in the Whisper Boys because, let's be honest, that was always something that never made sense in the original games. I suppose you could try to justify that William knew the animatronics were hostile, but I'm not buying it. Anyways, the old goons are free to walk into the lobby and up to the desk where you're sitting whenever they feel like it. When they do, you need to duck behind the desk very quickly in order for them to forget where you are in their old age and eventually wander back out of the lobby. Before I start diving into the reason behind some of the choices I made when designing the game, let's get into the characters' AI movement. In the Whisper Boys, the characters have the same AI movement opportunities that almost every other FNAF fan game has. Every few seconds, characters will choose a random number from 1 to 20. That number is compared to their AI value, and if the random number is greater than the AI value, they will perform a movement. However, I didn't just want to end their patterns there. Since I'm trying to implement sound, I wanted to give a reason to try and listen to where they are. So, on top of their movement opportunities, I also added a second value to each character called their intelligence value. Basically, the higher their intelligence, the higher the chance they are to move to a camera that is closer to the lobby. So, after the character chooses their random number and it's decided that they will be moving, their intelligence value is then checked as well. Depending on which camera the characters are currently on and which cameras are possible for them to move to, each of those possible cameras become labeled as smart moves or dumb moves. Again, the character will choose a random number between 1 and 20, and if the chosen number is greater than or equal to their intelligence value, they will move to one of the smart cameras at random, and if they don't meet the value, then they will move to one of the dumb cameras at random. Make sense? Hopefully, because that's the best I can do. What do you want from me? I'm a YouTuber, not an English major. You can eat my nuts. Now, something you might have noticed while I was explaining everything so far. If there's no power and the characters walk into your room and all you need to do is hide behind the desk, what's even the point of going into the cameras? Why wouldn't I just sit in the lobby and wait for someone to show up, then hide behind the desk? Or better yet, why don't I just fucking sit behind the desk the entire game and be safe the whole time? That's a very good question. I thought about it too. If you think about Five Nights at Freddy's 2, if Withered Foxy and the marionette didn't exist, then you could just sit behind the mask the entire game. So Scott thought of adding 2 different mechanics to force you out of that mask. So I clearly needed to do the same. But I didn't want to copy Scott's choices directly, since that is also something I regularly tend to criticize. To solve this problem, I added camera errors. Simply put, every few seconds an error will appear on the cameras and will make a notably loud and consistent noise. Kind of like the fucking seat seatbelt ding in a car that makes me want to bite my tongue so hard it falls out of my mouth. When you hear that noise, you need to go into your camera, find which camera has the error, and click on the error button that appears to fix the error. It's a very simple mechanic, but there's two small catches. The first catch is how the game determines when to give these errors. This is yet another value that is determined when the night begins. In the game, there is an error threat value, and the higher that error threat, the more frequent the errors will appear. The reason I wanted to add errors in the first place was to cause loud noises in a game where you need to be listening very closely to sounds to figure out where the characters were at. The second catch is that the error symbol appears in a random location each time an error happens. This isn't so much a difficulty spike as it is a minor inconvenience for the player. I find that a lot of FNAF games have the players fall into a pattern, and I wanted to find a small way to combat that. I feel like something like this was a great way to make that happen. It's not so big of a change that it's frustrating, but I feel it's just enough to cause players to go into crazy nerve control while trying to play and make them more likely to fall out of any potential pattern they've developed. What can I say? I'm kind of a devious little hobgoblin sometimes. Now, another question you might have is, you added this error system to prevent people from sitting in the office, but from what you've told me, there's no actual consequence to having an error in your camera, so I should probably tell you the consequence because that was actually something I noticed when I was first making the system. Who would have thought? My plan was for them to just be loud and distracting, but I quickly noticed that that didn't really matter, and players could still just sit their happy asses in the lobby and wait if they wanted to. So to mitigate this, I decided that if you get 6 errors at one time in your cameras, Carl would sprint at Mach 13 towards your lobby, and not even hiding would be able to stop him from ripping your cheeks into chunks. Great, so now we have a reason to check the cameras, and a reason to not only hide behind the counter, but that didn't feel like enough for me. That still sounded too easy in my head. I wanted to add one more mechanic, a mechanic that was simple to understand, but in practice can be really annoying and potentially difficult to deal with. I can't lie to you all, I crumbled here. I added a music box type mechanic. While you're in the lobby, not hiding behind the desk, a hearing aid counter can be seen on your screen that slowly goes up as the night goes on. If that hearing aid gets up to 100%, Carl will again charge into your office and ream your cheeks into oblivion. This problem that I had in coming up with another mechanic made me realize something and have a better appreciation for FNAF games I look at. While music boxes are definitely overdone, I can totally understand how it can feel like that's your only resort to turn to. It doesn't make the dev lazy or unoriginal. Sometimes a music box mechanic just fits, and I feel I made it fit too. Even if I wasn't happy with myself for doing so, overall, I feel this simple mechanic made the game feel complete and tied it all together. So, to any game I've ever criticized or called lazy for using a music box mechanic, I apologize. I now understand. Unless you're Five Nights at Wario's 2 adding a second goddamn music box to the game, that was still fucking bullshit and I will die on that hill. But now there's really only one more mechanic to cover, that being the purpose for there being 3 different sectors of the building. In the retirement home, the 3 sectors are the residential sector, the commons sector, and the employee sector. The residential sector consists of just that, where the residents reside. The commons sector contains the cafeteria, janitor's closet, and a bathroom, and the employee sector contains another bathroom and a break room. When each night begins, each character has 4 possible cameras that they can start on. I did this in hopes of making players want to quickly find where everyone is at the start of the night. When a character makes it into your office and you successfully hide from them, when they leave, they will choose one of the 3 sectors to go back to, and you will be able to hear which sector they went to based on the sound of their footsteps when they leave. Now, with all of the mechanics explained, I can start talking about my poor decisions when it came to nights 1 and 2. These 2 nights are the only nights with a phone call, and I can't even lie, I really dropped the ball here pretty hard. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's so smooth.
Yo, welcome to your
That's me.
night on the job at Capolora.
Each night has 6 in-game hours, each being a minute apiece. So your night is 6 minutes long in real life. The night 1 phone call is just over 4 minutes long. Can you tell what the problem of this night is going to be? Similar to other FNAF games, none of the characters begin to move until the phone call is almost complete, meaning that for a good 80% of night 1, nothing is happening. And if you were to somehow manage to lose on night 1, you would be forced to play another 4 minutes of absolute nothingness. If I attempt to make another game like this is definitely something I want to improve upon. Night 2 is when Carl is introduced, and so is his hearing aid mechanic. On this night, everyone's AI value is so low that again, you barely see any action. There's not many errors to deal with. You may get 10 visits throughout the whole night from the characters. I'm ashamed of myself for making the balance this bad. But once you get to night 3, I feel the game gets much better. But with that brings another problem. The difficulty curve from night 2 to night 4 is pretty insane. From the few people I've had test this game for me, and from my experience playing it, going from night 3 to night 4 is kind of a nightmare. You'll begin to have characters in the lobby very frequently, a lot of the time one after the other, preventing you from checking on your errors and lowering Carl's hearing aid. Again, difficulty curving and balancing in this game is something I'm definitely not proud of, and if I ever attempt to do something like this again, I'm definitely going to take it much more seriously. Finally, I need to talk about all 20 mode, which is just called nightmare mode. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I haven't fucking beaten it yet. And I honestly don't know if it's even possible. If one of you happens to beat it, I beg you to record your attempts and upload it, tagging me in the description or sending it to me on Discord. I would love to see it. It's so ass. I've probably poured a good hour and a half into it, maybe 2. I know that's not super long, but that's long for me because like, oh my goodness, it's a bit much. Goddamn. As much as I would love to sit here and talk your ear off more about this game, I want to leave some of the surprises to you if you decide to play. By the way, you can find the game on Game Jolt, the link is in the description. That's all I have for you in this video. I know it was a lot shorter than my normal ones, but I really wanted to try something new. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. I'm interested to see what you all think. Overall, designing this game gave me a much better understanding and appreciation for FNAF and FNAF fan games. I only spent 48 hours on this game, and I know that if I spent longer, the product would have become much better, and I applaud any respectful game dev doing the same. Thank you all for your creations. In the last video, I asked you all which FNAF game you thought had the best story and why. This is usually the part where I'd show my favorite comment, but I actually didn't find a comment answering the question. So instead, I'll show this comment from Daburu Tori, who explained why they liked the story of Graveyard Shift at Freddy so much. The question of this video is, what are your thoughts on the Whisper Boys, and do you think I should try making another FNAF game? A little bit of an egocentric question, I know, what can I say? With the question of the video being asked, I've been Dexter, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya! With the question of the video being asked, I've been Dexter, and Fuck.